So, welcome to the World Alliance of Qara'im weekly Torah study. I apologize, I'm a little late. I'm having some sound troubles, it seems. And I will just work on this until Hakhams Melech ben Yaakov shows up. Okay, everything seems to be working fine. I'm running about 5 minutes late. I apologize about that. Get my Torah. Here we go. So this week we are reading through Parashath Hayyei Sarah, and that will be Genesis chapter 23, starting at verse 1, and hopefully we will read through to chapter 25, verse 18. Probably not. We don't read very fast through the parasha. We always take our time and discuss lots of things. Sometimes they're pretty relevant, sometimes not relevant, but it's fun and interesting all the same. So let me post the link. This is the link for anyone who wants to join the live stream. Hopefully that'll post at both Facebook and YouTube. And let me check my WhatsApp again. Sending out all the invitations. Shabbath Shalom, Chase. I've been experiencing a bit of an echo, so hopefully it doesn't come through in the video. So just bear with me a few more minutes. I'm going through and posting the join the link everywhere. Oh, it's already there. Okay. Everything seems to be okay then. There we go. All right. So I'm gonna go ahead and get started, and hopefully everyone will begin to join us now. Almost 7 minutes into the broadcast, so I'll go ahead and start the Parashath. So this is chapter 23, starting at verse 1. وَيِهْيُ حَيَّي سَرَى مَيَا شَنَا وَعِسْرِيم شَنَا وَالشَّابَعَ شَنِي شَنَي حَيَّي سَرَى. And it says, so the life of Sarah was 127 years. And so were the years of Sarah's life. And now just to frame the context here, we just finished in last week's parasha the binding of Isaac. All right, and this is where it says Abraham took Yitzhak or Isaac, and he took him to Mount Moriah, and there he was supposed to sacrifice him, but he was redeemed with a ram. And it says that now this is really important. It says Abraham returned to Beersheba, and that's where he was at with Isaac. And so now we begin the next chapter about the life of Sarah. وتموت سارة بكيرة أربعة هي هبرون بأرض كنعان ويبو أبراهام لسبود لسارة وليv Kotha. And so Sarah died in Kiryat Arba, which is Hebron. Okay, Hebron's a little ways away from Beersheba, and that's in the land of Canaan. And it says Abraham came, which implies in itself that Abraham wasn't with Sarah. And so that's always been an interesting question. So it says Abraham came to mourn Sarah. And so the question is, why was it that Abraham wasn't with Sarah in Hebron? And I've never had a satisfactory answer to it. There's been lots of guesses and suppositions. And I think one of the best ones was that Sarah was angry with Abraham. But why was she in Hebron? Why did she separated from Abraham the way it seems anyways? It may not be true. It just seems that way. But if we read the text the way it is, Abraham wasn't with her when she died because it says he came to mourn her. Okay? If he had to come to Hebron to mourn her, then that means he wasn't there. So what was the problem? Now, Sarah, after many years of waiting on the promise of God that she would have a son, finally has a son. That son is Isaac, and God tells Abraham to go sacrifice Isaac. Whether or not she was told before he left with Isaac, it doesn't say. But one of the interesting comments I've read is that when Abram came back and told her what had just came to pass, that he was told to take Isaac up and sacrifice him, she was a little angry that he would take this child based upon a vision that he thought might have come from God to kill his son, the son that they've been waiting for, the only heir that he would have had from Sarah. Remember, the only reason Avram married Hagar was because Sarah had said, "Hey, take this slave girl of mine, and perhaps I'll have children through her." She was a surrogate wife to produce an heir only. But anyways, that's always been a little interesting that the text actually says that Abraham came to Hebron to mourn Sarah. Verse 3. ويقوم أبراهام معل بني ميثو ويدبر بني حيث ليمور. And so Abraham he stood up before his dead, talking about Sarah, and he spoke to the children of Hath, saying, now the children of Hath that's the Hittites, and they're one of the Canaanite peoples. Gir v'toshav anochi imachem Tanuli אחוזת קבר imachem وإقبرها ميثي ملفنai. So this is interesting that what Abraham says now. He says Ger v'toshav anochi, which means a resident and a migrant. Toshav, or has to do, it actually comes from the word yashab, which means to sit, and that's where we get the word moshav, which is a residence, from. And a toshav is someone who happens to be a resident, and is normally used for migrants. Ger is another word that also means a resident. It's a misnomer. It's completely false to think that ger means a convert. How silly would that be? Abram would then be saying, I'm a resident convert with you. What did he convert to? Hittitism? Canaanitism? That's not what it means at all. It means a resident, someone who lives amongst a foreign people. And it doesn't necessarily have to be a foreign people, because even Levites are considered a ger. In the Torah, it says when your Levite brother lives in one of your inheritances, and it uses the word gar, which is a participle, an active participle. Ger is the noun, gar is the participle. So that doesn't mean a convert at all. In fact, it was rabbinic interpretation thousands of years later that invented the idea and concept that ger meant a convert. So he says, a resident and a migrant I am with you. Give me a burial possession with you, because I would like to bury my dead in my presence. Verse 5. ويعنوا بني حيث at Abraham lemor lo. And so the children of Heth answered Abraham, saying to him, Shema'inu Adoni, Nasi Elohim Ata V'Thochenu B'Mivhar Kevarenu Kevor et Meisecha Ish Miminu et Kivro lo Yichle Mimcha Michbor Meisecha. And so this is what they then said to him, "Listen to us, my lord." Adonai is what they called Abraham. You are a prince of God amongst us, or a prince or a president or someone who is in charge amongst us. In the choices of our tombs or graves, then bury your dead. There is no man amongst us who will withhold from you that you would bury your dead. Now, this word to withhold is the same word that God just used earlier when he says, "Now I know that you won't withhold anything from me, even your son." And so that's pretty interesting. It says that the Hittites basically told Abram that there's not one man amongst us who would withhold any tomb from him. ويقوم أبراهام ويشتهو لعم هآرت لبني حيث. And so Abraham got up and then he prostrated himself to the people of the land, to the children of Hath. This is what's called obeisance, which is basically a form of respect. It's not that he is worshiping or submitting himself to the children of Het, but he is offering them his sign of respect. Verse 8. ويذبر إتام لمور إم يهيش إت نفسكم لخبور إت ميثي ملفناي شمعوني وفضعولي بإفرون ben Sochar. And so he spoke with them, saying, if it is your intention or your desire, this is the word nefesh, which is interesting, this word. In Arabic, they use the word nafs, which means a soul or a person, but it also talks about your lower desires and appetites. And according to Islamic tradition, a person has three types of the soul. You have what's called the nafsul lawama, the nafsul amara, and the nafsul mutma'inna. And basically, the nafsul lawama is the soul that reproaches itself, which means you basically are self-criticizing. Then you have the nafsul amara, which means the commanding soul. This is the soul that commands you to do those things that you shouldn't do. And then you have what's called the nafsul mutma'inna, which means the tranquil soul. And you reach tranquility according to the Quran text. Which means truly by remembering God is the heart made tranquil. And so the word nefesh in Semitic can mean a person or a soul, but it can also be talking about the animalistic desire. And so this is the idea here. So he says, Im yesh es nafshechem, if it is your will or your desire, that I bury my dead in my presence, then listen to me and set up a meeting with me with Ephraim, who is the son of Sohar. Verse 9. ويتن لي معرض حمقلا أشر له أشر بقصي صديه بكسف ملئ يتنن لي بثوخهم لأحوزة قابر. And let him give me the cave of Machpelah, which he has, which is at the edge of his field, for the amount of for the full amount of, literally it says silver kesef, but it's talking about money, that he shall lay upon me amongst you as a burial possession. So it's important to note that Abraham didn't want to be gifted the property. The Hittites wanted to give it to him, but he is basically saying he wishes to purchase it, that it actually be his. Verse 10. وعفرون يشيب الثوخ بني هيث وياعن عفرون حهيتي את אברהם באוזני בני هيث לכל באי שער עירו לאמור. Now Ephron was sitting amongst the children of Heth, and Ephron the Hittite answered Abraham in the ears of the Hittites, or in the hearing of the children of Heth, for all who were entering into the gates of his city, saying. Now it's important when you think about the idea of entering the gates of a city, this is where normally judgment took place. If you had any legal case that you had to have adjudicated, then you would take that case to the judges, and that would normally be in the gates of the cities. And that's where the cases were normally handled and tried. And so here we have a legal contract that's taking place here. And Abraham is, according to the text, he is with them, with the children of Heth, and he's speaking so that everyone who enters in through the gate can hear and see and be witnesses to this transaction. So, good afternoon, Ken. I hope I'm saying that right, Ken. I don't see the I'm not looking at the messages as I read, so I have to every now and then just look up and see if anybody writes anything to me. So that was verse 10. Verse 11. Lo Adoni Shema'ini Hasade Nathati Lach Wahamna'ara Asher Bo Lecha Nathatiha Li'anei Bnei Ammi Nathatiha Lach Kavor Metecha. And so this is Ephron. He says, "No, my Lord, listen to me. The field I will give to you, and the cave that is with it I will also give to you. Before the eyes of the children of my people I give it to you. Bury your dead." So here is Ephron who says he doesn't want any money, and he's basically saying, "No, I'll give it to you." And notice, this is something else too. These are Hittites. These are Canaanite people, and they're living in Canaan. Now, this is after the wars that Avram fought with his 318 men, his retainers, when he went to rescue his nephew Lot. And the people, of course, understood that Avram's not just some pushover. He is a prophet of God. He's a prince of God, as they've already established here. And also, he is battle hardened. He's not somebody to just be played with. They seen him and his 318 men go against the combined armies of Kedar and Omer and defeated him. So it's interesting that they're saying they're using these respectful titles of my Lord or Prince of God and so forth. And they're not wanting any payment for it. They're wanting to give him something, but he doesn't want that. وَيُشْتَهُ Abraham لِفْنَيْ عَمْهَارِ. So Abraham prostrated himself before the people of the land, which are the Hittites, the Canaanites. وَيَدَبِّرْ إِلَى عِفْرَانَ بِأُذْنَيْ عَمْهَارِ لَمُورْ أَخْ إِمْ أَتَلُّ شِمَعِينِي نَثَتِّ خَاسِفْ حَسَّبَيْ كَخْ مِنِّي وَإِقْبِرَ إِتْمَيْثِي شَمَّا. And so now this is Avram's response to what he says. And so it says, he spoke. And so he spoke to Ephron in the ears of the people of the land, saying, if you would just listen to me. If you would but listen to me, I will give you the price of the field. Take it from me, and I will bury my dead there. So basically, he's saying he doesn't want it as a gift. He wants to pay for this possession. Verse 14. وَيَا Ephron et Abraham lemor lo. And so Ephron then answered Abraham, saying to him, Adoni Shema'ini Eretz Arba' Me'oth Shekhel Kesef Beini Ubenecha Mahi with Meitecha Kibor. So this is what Ephron now responds to Abram. He says, my Lord, listen to me. A land of 400 shekels of silver. But what is that between me and you? As for your dead, bury your dead. And now bury your dead. So Ephron, without asking for money, he just explained to Abraham how much the field was worth in his estimation. So it's 400 shekels of silver. Now, this wasn't, like I said, this wasn't Ephraim saying, this is what I'll take. But basically, he just gave his estimation of how much he thought the field was worth. Now, verse 16, وَيِشْمَعْ Abraham il Ephron, وَيِشْقُلْ Abraham le'Ephron et HaKesef, أَشَرْ دِبَّر بأذني بني حيت 400 شيخ الكاسف عبير للسحير. And so it says Abraham listened to Ephraim, and he measured out to Ephraim the silver or the money, as he spoke in the ears of the children of Heth. 400 weight of silver or shekels of silver passed, which was current, which is over the which basically means which is used as currency for merchants. And so that is the end of the first Aliyah. And chapter 23, verse 17 now begins the second Aliyah. Unless there are any questions, I'll make my brief commentary as I go until Melech gets here, and then we'll have some longer discussion and conversation. Now, I'm not looking in Facebook, and I'm not looking in YouTube. I'm in the studio at StreamYard, so I'm hoping that all of the comments in both places will be coming here. If not, I don't see them. I apologize. An Aliyah, okay. An Aliyah, well, you know what a parasha is. A parasha, we have 53 parashot, which the Torah is divided into. And each parasha is read during one of the weeks of the year. In each parasha, you have what's called 7 aliyot. And aliyah, which means an ascent, basically, is where someone stands up to come and read the Torah in a synagogue service. The first one is usually reserved for a Kohen, and the second one is for a Levite. And after that, from the third one until the seventh, that's reserved for any of the male members of the community, or even the female members. The female members can also read. There's nothing that prevents them from reading, unlike what most Orthodox Jews would have you believe. And so when I talk about an aliyah, that's what I'm talking about. One of the 7 aliyot, which each parasha is divided in. It's normally marked in most Hebrew manuscripts. Sometimes it's not, but normally it is. I'm not sure if it is in the BHS and the WLC, but what I have is the Torah. It's just the Torah, it's not the Tanakh. And basically, let me see if I can put this up here. So we see the parasha, which says Hayyei Sarah, and this will be the beginning of the parasha is always the first aliyah, and then on the side, either this side or the other side, you'll see it. You'll get to like right here. I don't know if you can see that. Right here by my finger, it says Sheni, which just means second. And so that lets you know that that's the second aliyah. And usually when you go to a synagogue, the Torah is read in a certain manner, depending on which custom you observe, Ashkenazi, Sephardi, Mizrahi, or Yemenite. They're all pretty close to the same idea anyway behind it. But at the end of each aliyah, you'll hear them recite the last clause in a different manner. And that just signifies that that is the end of the aliyah. And then they would make the closing blessing, and then they would sit down, and the Gabbai or the Kohen would normally call up the next person to read. So hopefully that explained what an aliyah was. If not, then I'll go back through it explain it a little bit better. But my practice is, the way I do it is, every morning I read one aliyah, and that's the aliyah for the parasha of that week that I'm reading. And and I start in the evening also. So, for instance, tonight I will actually read the first aliyah of the next parasha, which is Toledot. And so I'll read that tonight at the close of Shabbat. And then in the morning when I wake up, I'll read it again. So the aliyah that I read the previous evening is the same one I read that morning. And then I think about what I read throughout the day. And so I concentrate only on that certain aliyah all day long throughout the day. And so by the end of the week, I've had sufficient time to contemplate and think about the aliyah that I read and the parasha that we're covering during. And for me, that's just a wonderful time of meditation and contemplation, and it makes it easier instead of rushing through the parasha just on Shabbat. I don't know if any of you've gone to a synagogue service, but Melech can testify to this. Usually they're read pretty fast.
On Shabbat, I mean, sometimes
Yeah.
it'll go a little bit slower. On Shabbat, sometimes it's a more relaxed pace, but in general, I would say the average minyan that you go to is generally not a pleasant experience. It's rushed. It's just the same prayers again and again, which just some people say, oh, that promotes kind of a continuity or tradition. You always end with Adon Olam. And yeah, there's something nice to that, but it's when you're saying the same things again and again and again and again, you can't help but doing them from rote. It's like you drive a car. There's nothing new and exciting about driving a car, right? It's nice, but it's nothing new and exciting about it. Well, I don't think our prayer to God should fall into the same category as something so done so from rote that it's like driving a car. You can be half asleep when you do it, which most of the people in the synagogue generally are. I've been to some nice minyans. There's some which are really nice and relaxed. I remember this one Sephardi minyan I went to, which was in Israel, which was very nice. It was very early in the morning, like 6 o'clock. Only a couple of people were there, maybe like 10, 15 people. Nice soft couches, and everyone. This is when I was an Orthodox Jew, so everyone would put on their tefillin, and they just all sit in their little corner, and everything was like really mellow paced. Sometimes I have like herbs or like flowers or herbs in the room, and it would be really just like you could find some nice ones, but in general, I think that the rabbinical praying system is a disaster. It's just it's just that everyone doing it from rote out of obligation. That's not what prayers. Could you imagine King David or Abraham doing prayers from rote out of obligation 3 times a day? That would be just an embarrassment to the relationship that they had with Yehovah. And unfortunately, that's what I would say the vast majority of the Orthodox world does every single day. They're just checking off checks on the checklist. So
we were discussing the aliyot in the parasha.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And so they were asking, because I always talk about the aliyah, and they asked me about what is the aliyah. And I basically explain how I read the Torah each week.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And for me, it makes it a little bit easier. It breaks it up. Instead of doing it all on Shabbat, I do it each day in small doses.
No, you can't. I mean, that's what the aliyot are for. You can't, you can't do it all in one day. You can't study anything all in one day. This is
no.
Again, to go on another a rant or tirade. This is exactly why you look at the Orthodox Jews, and all they do is study all day long, and they think they're getting ahead by doing that, but they're not getting ahead. They're falling behind because there's no balance there. There has to be a balance. Mm-hmm. Wisdom is not extremeness. Wisdom is balance. You can almost say that the definition of wisdom is balance, is finding what the correct balance is in the world. So when you have Orthodox Jews that will study all day long, and they don't work, and they don't enjoy nature, and they don't have other hobbies, and they don't do anything except study all day long, I can guarantee you those are not wise people. Those are very stupid people, because if they had any wisdom at all, they would realize that that's not the way to wisdom. So it's ironic, but you need the wisdom to realize that that's not the way to wisdom. You need the wisdom to be able to hold back. And unfortunately, in the Orthodox Jewish world, that's not always. I would say, depends. In the ultra-Orthodox world, for sure, that's not the case. There's no balance there at all. And so these are people who are wiser in their own minds than they are in reality.
That's a fact. So we are in chapter 23, and we're starting the second aliyah, which is at verse 17. So we basically just went through the first 16 verses of the parasha.
Okay. So wait a second. Let me bring it up here. So where are we?
We're in 23, verse 17 now.
Damn, how did we get so far in Genesis already? I feel like we just started it. We were just talking about, the creation on the sixth day, and now here we are. All right, go figure. 23:17. All righty. Okay. All right. So, go ahead. You want me to do it? 23:17. All right, I'll do it.
No, well, I was just waiting for you to get there, and I didn't know if you had anything you wanted to mention from the first 16 verses.
Right. Not at the moment. No, we could just forge ahead.
Okay.
I mean, I for verse 17, I'll read it, I guess. ויקם שדה עפרון אשר במכפלה אשר לפני ממרא השדה והמערה אשר בו וכל העץ אשר בשדה אשר בכל גבולו סביב. Okay. So the field is in Machpelah, whatever that means, right? Machpelah is apparently the name of the cave, but it means the field is Machpelah, I guess, is the name of a place, actually, because it says the field is in Machpelah, right? So I guess it's Machpelah would make it a larger area or a town or something like that, Asher lifnei mamreh. Okay, so we know this is in near Elon Mamre, and I'll just mention again your Dvar Torah, which I don't know if it checks itself out, but it is very interesting. You mentioned that we have Alon More and we have Alon Mamre, and is there a relationship between the two, or were they named? Did the names behind them have similar meanings? Okay, so basically he didn't just buy the cave, he bought the field of Ephron, which was in this place called Machpelah. I point that out because when someone in modern Israel says Machpelah, all they think about is the cave.
Mm-hmm.
But it was a whole field that belonged to this Ephron dude, and now it belongs to Abraham. Okay. Anything you want to add there, Yaakov?
No.
Alrighty. Verse 18, Abraham. לאברהם למקנה לעיני מנחית בכל באשar יורו. Okay. So this is the Abraham is modifying the V'yakam Sadeh Ephron, right? So it's basically like a continuation of what we saw in the previous sentence. Okay, so Yakam. So literally, Yakam means so literally means the field got up, but it's a euphemism for saying basically, I guess you could say, exchanged hands or was bought, but it literally means the field got up, or the field arose. So it arose out of Ephron's possession and became Abraham, and out of Ephron's possession and descended into the possession of Abraham. You can think of it maybe that way. So Abraham lemiknei, Abraham lemiknei, lemikna, le'einei. So if we put it all together, we take out all the other stuff, and again, as we've mentioned a bunch of times, Hebrew is an interesting language because phrases that modify each other can be separated by intervening phrases, which are quite long, sometimes even paragraphs long, quite frankly. But here we have, if we take out the intervening gobbledygook, I'm sorry, I shouldn't be calling the Torah gobbledygook, but all right. Bad Chacham. It really what it's saying is here, V'yakam sadeh Ephron la'Avraham limikna la'enei b'nei chet b'chol ba'ei shar iro. Okay, so it arose, literally the field arose, the field of Ephron arose to Abraham as a purchase, lamikna la'enei b'nei chet, in front of the eyes of the children of Chet, b'chol ba'ei shar iro, all of those, literally all of those who are coming into the gate of his city. And we've also mentioned many times in these studies and in other studies that the gate of the city is where all the action took place, right? This is what, not an entire book can be written on the, not an entire book, entire volume of books can be written on the use of imagery of a city, a wall, a gate, a lock, and a bar, right? You have manul and bariach and delet, delatot, shar. These analogies, these what's the word I'm looking for? Allegories, or no, that's the wrong word. I can't think of it. But these images are used all the time throughout the Tanakh, and so for instance, when God says to who is it? I don't want to misquote it. I can't remember now exactly where. But the phrase many times, you will inherit the gate of your enemy. I think he says it to Abraham. Maybe it wasn't Abraham. Maybe it was Yaakov that says it to, I can't remember. Anyway, it's used a bunch of times, right? You will inherit the gate of your enemy, right? Yirash shar oivecha, right? And literally, the gate is the key to the city. That's where that if you take over the gate of the city, right, that you've conquered the city. The gate, inside the gate, is where all the action took place. Because if you think of these old cities, these walled cities, right, and the whole idea of a wall is a huge topic in the Tanakh. A walled city versus a non-walled city, right? The wall was the protection of ancient times. If your city was not walled, it was like being naked. You were bare before your enemies. So inside, in the wall, are the gates. That's how you get in and out of the city. And the gates are obviously guarded. And inside the gate, right when you walk in there, was usually the rechava, was usually the courtyard, or the courtyard area, and that's where all the action took place. So when it says ba'eshar iro, it means all those who are coming to the city, they're going to be passing basically through the center of town. They're basically going to be passing, through through downtown of the city, and that's what this means here. And we've seen this imagery used many times. Okay, go ahead, Yaakov. Verse 19. You want to take it? Oh, there goes Yaakov to chase after one of his lions.
Yeah, I had to go let one of the lions in the bedroom.
All right. Verse 19.
So we have a question. It's from Bereshith. It's not from Parashath Hayyei Sarah. But it's a question if you want to tackle it now. If not, I could just say we handled that in the first parasha of the Torah, and that is actually on the YouTube site in the playlist for Genesis. It's the first the first video. But I'll show the question. Here's the question. Can you see that, Melech?
I'm trying to look for it. So you want me to look at the question itself? I'm trying to get in there. Hold on one second.
It's from Carrie Rivera.
Yeah.
It says, Shabbat Shalom. Can anyone answer a question for me, please? What is the serpent in the Garden of Eden? People are telling me that the word for serpent translates to magician, and the entire story is a metaphor.
Okay. All right. So you can handle that one if you want, Yaakov.
What the serpent is or isn't, we aren't actually told. Well, that's not completely explained, other than it happened to be one of the beasts of the field.
Mm-hmm.
or the animals of the field, not necessarily a beast, but it says one of the animals of the field. And it was actually one of the most crafty, if you would, of these animals. Now, the issue was that this happened at a tree that was said to be forbidden for the humans to eat. Why it was forbidden to eat doesn't make any difference. What was it that they weren't to eat? That makes no difference either. It's just a tree, and they weren't supposed to partake of that fruit. But it was only the human beings who were forbidden from it. The animals weren't. Now, the idea was that this serpent was speaking to the woman. And it's interesting that she says in the exchange, or it says of her in this exchange, that she saw. It says she saw or she perceived, because when to perceive means to see or to understand or come to a realization of something, that the fruit was good for food. It was desirous to look at. It was pleasing to the eye. And it says it was also desirable to cause someone to become wise or to have intellect. Now, the question I've always had is, why would it say that she saw this and came to this conclusion? And for me, it was probably the fact that other animals were eating it. You had an animal speaking to her with intellect, having a pretty decent conversation. But anyways, the word that you're talking about is nachash. Nachash is usually used for a serpent. In fact, in the story of Exodus, when it talks about the staff of Moses, that became what was called a nachash, but it's also called a tanin in the same story. And this is some sort of reptile. In later Semitic, ten or tanin is what they call, what's translated into Greek as drakon, which what we say dragon. What it actually meant, we're not actually sure, but we do know that in this place, in the story of the Exodus, that the staff that Moses had that turned into a serpent was called both a nachash as well as a tanin. But it's clear that this was not a magician, for the simple reason that it was one of the animals of the field. It wasn't a human being. Human beings are never referred to as being animals of the field. So that is incorrect if someone says that here in this context that was a magician.
Mm-hmm.
So that's my opinion of it.
Yeah. And I mean, it's a long topic. I'll just briefly add my opinion, which is, I don't know. I really don't, in terms of whether it's meant to be an allegory or whether it's meant to be true. You know, talking snakes and it's and things like that. I mean, we have a talking donkey in the book of Numbers with Bilam's donkey, but do we take everything literally from the Garden of Eden story or not? I really don't know. I tend to say yes. That's, being a fundamentalist, I'm going to go with yes, but I definitely accept the possibility that this is all, some kind of allegory. But I don't have the answer, and I don't think anyone has the answer. And I think anyone who claims that they have the answer is lying, because it's just, I mean, it's to expect that these things happen in real life is, requires a leap of faith. And I don't know that it's nothing wrong with a leap of faith, but I don't know that the leap of faith is necessary, because it's entirely possible that maybe this is all just some kind of big allegory. But I tend to go with the more literal interpretation, unless proven otherwise. So that's just my 2 cents. All right. So where are we?
Well, if a donkey talked to Balaam, then certainly a serpent talked to
right.
Eve.
Right.
And that the point being though is that whatever this was, it's not a magician. I've heard rabbis. I can't remember the rabbi's name. I'll post it in the comments later. This was a couple weekends ago. He made a video that's basically, I don't know, it might have been longer than a few weekends ago, but basically he was claiming that Cain and Abel were part reptilian,
Mm-hmm.
and that for some way, shape, or form, the serpent had sex with Eve.
Mm-hmm.
And both of them died out, and so the actual line of Adam began with Seth, which is, in my opinion, completely nonsense.
Right.
But anyhow, so
Yeah.
hopefully that answered your question, and we can return to the parasha.
Mm-hmm.
So now we are in 19, I think. Yep, 19.
Mm-hmm.
ואחרי כן חבר אברהם את שרה אשתו אל מערת שדה המכפלה על פני ממרא היא חברון בארץ כנען. And so afterwards, Abraham buried Sarah, his wife. It says, to the cave of the field of Machpelah, which is basically in this cave,
Yeah.
which was before Mamre, which is Hebron.
Mm-hmm.
So Mamre is a place which is actually Hebron, and we saw earlier that the name of Hebron is also called Kiryat Arba. And
Mm-hmm.
later, when we read through the book of Joshua, I think it's Joshua, we'll see that Hebron gets named after a person named Hebron later.
Mm-hmm.
So this is one of those things we were speaking about last week,
Right.
about the names of certain places, because the question always comes up about the divine name of God. How could it be first revealed to Moses in Exodus and not? And it's actually said that he wasn't known by this name earlier, but it seems to be throughout the Torah. And
Mm-hmm.
and I've always pointed out, it's the same thing with the names of the cities that were not called those names at the time of Abraham. It was not called Hebron in the
Mm-hmm.
time of Abraham.
Right.
Just
Well,
like
let's find that
Bethlehem
place
wasn't
in the
called
book of Joshua, just to solidify that point. That's a very
of
important point
Hebron,
in terms
where
of
it's named.
Yeah.
Let me give me just a second. I'll look it up.
Sure. I'm going to look it up too. I believe it's in Joshua book 10. I mean, chapter 10.
Could be.
No, here it is.
14.
15. Yeah.
Then it's in Joshua chapter 14, and you'll see it says, Hebron therefore became the inheritance of Caleb, the son of Jephunneh, the Kenizzite, until this day, because he fully followed God, the God of Israel. And the name of Hebron before was Kiryat Arba. This Arba was the biggest man among the Anakim, and the land had rest from war.
But it does not say why Hebron was called Hebron there. Mishim Hebron Yichnikirid Arba Adam Agadol Anakim Hu ve'eretz Shakta Mimilchama. So Kiryat Arba, I think Arba was the name of the giant, the Anak.
Yeah.
That's being spoken about, but we don't see where the name Hebron comes from in these two sentences.
Let me find that.
Yeah.
It could be that I was thinking about something.
Let's see. Hebron Bahar Yehuda. Okay, Hebron Bahar Yehuda Har Tzech Hebron. Okay. Yeah. All right. Listen, we can't find it. We don't have to get.
Yeah, I'll find it later and post it.
All right, that's fine. Okay.
But anyway, you'll see that throughout the Tanakh. You'll see the names of towns like Bethlehem. There were actually two places called Bethlehem. One was in the inheritance of Naphtali, and the other one was in the inheritance of Judah. Then you have, or it might have been Zebulun. But anyways, it was in the north, and one was in the inheritance of Judah. But Bethlehem was actually called Ephrathah before. Bethel was called Luz. And so you'll see those names used. And anyway, that's here we have Hebron. At the time of Abraham, it was called Mamre. It was also called Kiryat Arba. So, verse 20. ويقوم حسدي وحمعرا أشر بو لأبراهام يأخذ القابر مئة بني حيث. And so the field and the cave which was with it was established for Abraham as a burial possession from the children of Heth. So,
go on. I'm just getting a drink of water, but I'm listening to every word. Go ahead.
No problem.
Yeah.
So, chapter 24, verse 1. Are you back? Okay, verse 1, chapter 24. وأبراهام زقين با بيمين وأدونai بيراخ at Abraham بقول. So Abraham became old. He was Bayamin, which literally means he was come into days.
Yeah, they usually translate that as advanced in years, but literally it means coming in days, advanced. I guess advanced is actually a good translation because ba means to come, right? To come, to arrive, so to advance, right? It's very hard. It's one of those idioms that's very hard to translate, but that's the way it's usually translated as advanced in years.
And Adonai blessed Abraham with everything or in everything he did. Verse 2. ויאמר אברהם אל עבדו זקן ביתו המושל בכל אשר לו שים נא ידך תחת ירכי. So Abraham says to his servant, the elder of his house, the one who had control of all that he had, set now your hand under my thigh.
Which, by the way, is one must point out is probably a euphemism for grabbing the private parts, right? And well, we're embarrassed about it in this day and time. But I mean, is there any more? If you're going to make an oath on something, you know, like,
I've certainly heard that before, but the yerech is normally the loin,
right?
And that's normally what the source of the seed is, according to the Tanakh.
Yeah,
all those who came out of the loin of Yaakov.
Right.
So what it actually signified. I don't know. I've definitely heard that one though, that he put his hand either between his thighs and grasped hold of the private parts, or set his hand under the thigh. Doesn't make any difference. It was an oath, and that's
we know also that the Torah, when it speaks about these kinds of, when it speaks about sexual stuff, or not that it was necessarily sexual, but private parts and things along those lines, that it often uses euphemisms, right?
Oh, yeah.
So to have sex with is shochev or shechav, which literally just means lie down, but it's a euphemism for having to have sex with, or to have penetrative sex with somebody. And here comes our cat. And there's there are many more examples, but so I guess it's not that important a point, but I think there is a lot of evidence here that this was like a solemn oath between guys here, and what more solemn part, what more private part, and
it was a little more solemn than a pinky swear.
Well, in the modern age, I mean, did you do, when you were growing up, did you do blood brothers ever?
Yeah.
Do blood brothers, right? You pierce a little hole, and then the other person pierces a little hole, and you rub them together, and it's supposed to be like your blood flows into my veins, and my blood flows into your veins. I mean, I guess in the days of AIDS and COVID-19 and all this kind of stuff, people don't do it anymore. But when we were growing up, we used to do blood brothers or pinky swears, like you said. So it's important, because if you're taking such an oath, you really want to kind of, I don't know, get to the heart of the matter, so to speak. You want it to be a very kind of solemn thing, or you're really like letting the other person, to your most inner essence, and that's a way of signifying that. And it also must be pointed out that in ancient times, and I believe in some societies in modern times, that's still what's done. It reminds me of when Borat is going to right, we can laugh, but Borat is mocking, like, kind of more primitive society. So Borat is in one of the TV shows, is going around, and he says that he's going canvassing with some politician, or he's going around talking to potential voters with some politician, and he says something. He says to the politician, he says may I touch your chram? Can I touch your chram? And the guy's like, no, we don't do this, and we don't do that kind of that stuff in this country. So, in my country, we we do it, whatever. Anyway, so the point being that it is entirely reasonable that's what this is talking about, even though it's not acceptable in our modern Western society, and is considered a little weird and creepy. Okay, anyway.
Yep. So verse 3. وأشبعها بأدوناي إلهي השמיים وإلهי הארץ אשר לא תיקח אישה לבני מבנות הכנעני אשר אנוכי יושב בקרבו.
And by the way, I'm sorry, go ahead, Yahoo.
For I am adjuring you by Adonai, the God of the heavens and the God of the earth, that you will not take a woman for my son, of the daughters of Canaan, of the Canaanites, among whom I am now residing.
And it's interesting to point out here that it's assumed that this is Eliezer, who's mentioned in Genesis 15 as
He was supposed to be the heir.
right. Or
Before Isaac was
Abraham
born.
complains that Eliezer of Damascus is going to be his heir if he has no children, right? So it's assumed that this is Eliezer, but it does not say that anywhere.
No.
And the name is never used. And a certain Karaite that I used to learn with would always point out that, it's interesting that the name is never mentioned. We don't know. It just could have been a servant of Abraham. But I think the implication, it seems clear, right, from the language here. Avdo, Zkan Beito, Hamoshel B'chol Asher Lo, meaning the elder of his house, the one who ruled over, or the one who had dominion over everything he had, so clearly based on Genesis 15, who else? It would seem logical that's Eliezer, even though the name is not mentioned here explicitly. And I think the only place ever, if I'm not mistaken, Eliezer only appears once, maybe twice, but I think once in the entire Tanakh, and that's that verse in Genesis 15. I don't think he's ever mentioned again by name, but I'm just my own curiosity. I'm going to check that right now, Eliezer. Just for a second. Okay.
You're saying that the name Eliezer was only used at one time?
Not the name Eliezer, because there are other Eliezers, but that person, Eliezer.
Oh, yeah.
The slave.
Yeah, he was from Damascus.
Right. Eliezer of Damascus is, I think, only mentioned once in the entire Tanakh by name.
Yeah.
If I'm not mistaken. I'm just curious. I just want to, if it doesn't take too long, I'd like to look it up. Damascus. Yes, I have to go by Damascus. Okay, let's see here. Isaiah Kings, Isaiah, almost. Well, Damascus is certainly mentioned a lot, but let's see. It doesn't even mention it. And shoot, 1 second. I'm sorry, guys. I'm just going to satisfy my own curiosity. If you want to go ahead, Yaakov, you can go ahead, and I'll spend my time.
So I'll read until you find it. We're in verse 4 now.
Yeah.
Il arzi, وفي مولدتي تريك ولقحت إشاء لبني لإسحاق. Rather, you shall go to my land and to my relatives, and you shall take a wife for my son, for Isaac.
Right. So we see already, we don't want Abraham doesn't want his son, his only son, who he waited 100 years for, intermarrying with these lowly Canaanites, right? So this is kind of, in a sense, foreshadowing, or what's the a prequel or something like that. Maybe
this happens twice. Once here in the story of Abraham, and then once in the story of Yitzhak. Because Yaakov is also told by his father to go to his uncle to get a wife and not take a wife from amongst the Canaanites.
Right. But that's definitely true. But I was referring to something else. This is later on codified into Torah law, that we're not to intermarry with the Canaanites.
We see already,
right? We see already that that Abraham is basically in the ancestors, right? We see already that they're basically saying, like, these people are these people are just scum. These are low lives. We don't want them intermixing with our nation in the least, right? And that's later codified into law in the Torah. So I don't know. Could you call it kind of a? What was the problem that I guess that Abraham had specifically with the Canaanites? It's by sending him back to to his ancient homeland. Were the people there any better? Certainly Lavan, where Yaakov was sent eventually, was not a better person.
We look at the narratives of Noah, where you actually have Canaan born.
Sure.
And he was the son of Ham,
right,
and the brother of Mitzrayim, which is Egypt, and Cush, which is Ethiopia. And it says specifically that Canaan would be dispossessed. And he wasn't supposed to dwell in the tents of his brothers, whereas Japheth was said to be allowed to dwell in the tents of Shem, and they would basically work together, but Canaan himself was completely dispossessed, and that's actually what happened later. When we see the Canaanites driven out, they were basically the same sons of Canaan, with a few other nations that we don't know exactly where they came from.
Right.
But they were lumped in with that Canaanite. Now the word Canaan, Canaan, is interesting in itself because it means to subjugate. So the land that Eretz
Perhaps
Canaan.
that I think is speculation, but perhaps.
No, the verb actually means to subjugate.
No, I know that the verb it's in modern Hebrew as well. You could say
That's in the
lichanea.
Torah. It says when you it's in the Tanakh. It says when they came in, they subjugated the people.
Yes, I understand that, but I don't know if the implication is that the word Canaan comes from that verb, but it's possible. I just want to point out it's not an etymology for the name that's specifically given in the Torah. That's your own chidush, which may be right, but it's not explicitly stated in the Tanakh.
So we don't know where Canaan came from.
We don't know where the name came from. That's right. It could have been who knows? It could have been a Hamitic name for all we know.
Well, I'm pretty sure it was a Hamitic name.
Well, if it's a Hamitic name, then how can you relate it back to a
Canaan was the son of Ham. It was absolutely a Hamitic name.
I didn't mean it in that way, but okay. Any rate, that's true. Anyway, go on.
But anyhow,
Yep.
so the idea was that he was to go back to my land and to my relatives, and there he was to take a wife for Isaac. ויאמר אליו העבד, אולי לא תובע האישה ללכת אחריי אל הארץ הזאת. אשיב את בנך אל הארץ אשר יצאת משם. And so he says to him, so the servant says to him, perhaps the woman will refuse to go or to follow me to this land. Shall I then return your son to the land from where you came out? Yomer elav Abraham, and so Abraham says to him, Hishamer lecha pintashiv et bani shamna. Be very careful that you lest you return my son there. Adonai Elohei Hashemayim asher lechani מבית אבי ומארץ מולדתי ואשר דיבר לי ואשר נשבע לי לאמור לזרעך אתן את הארץ הזאת הוא ישלח מלאכו לפניך ולקחת אישה לבני משם. Adonai, the God of the heavens, who took me from the house of my father and from the land of my relatives, and who spoke to me, and also the one who swore to me, saying, to your seed I will give this land. He will send his malach, his messenger, before you, and you shall take a wife for my son from there.
Right.
ואם לא תובע האישה ללכת אחריך, ונקית משבועתי זאת, רק את בני לא תשב שמה. However, if the woman does not agree to follow you, then you will be free or innocent from this oath. Only my son you shall not return there.
That's right. So, okay, couple things I'd like to point out here. First of all, I did look it up in the word Eliezer. There are a number of different Eliezers, including the son of one of the sons of Moshe is named Eliezer. But Eliezer, as the servant of Abraham, is mentioned only one time in the Torah, and that's in Genesis 15 when Abraham laments that if he doesn't have his own children, then Eliezer of Damascus will be his heir. But he's never, ever, anywhere in the entire Tanakh mentioned again by name. Never. There was something else I wanted to point out, and now it just escaped my mind. So, okay, we can go ahead, and if I remember it, then I'll remember it.
Now, I would like to call everyone's attention to the next verse. It's going to have a grammatical form there.
I know what I was going to say. I know what I was going to say. So this is, we see here that Abraham's basically he's advanced, Bab Yamim, right? He was advanced. So this is like his dying wish, right? So I mean, it's like this is and of course the servant is going to listen to Abraham's dying wish. It kind of reminds me of a much greater person than Abraham named Ruth Bader Ginsburg. Remember, everyone had to listen to her dying wish. So, okay, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Okay, so this next verse.
And by the way, can I say one more thing? I had a very good friends in Israel. This is totally derech hagav. This is totally off the topic, but I just must say, I had very good friends in Israel named I won't mention the name, but the father was very high in the Rabbi Kahana movement. Did I tell you this, Yaakov?
I don't remember. You might have.
He was a lawyer. He died in 2011. I was very, very close to them, to he and his wife. His wife is still alive, and I'm very close to them. And he was in the same law school as Ruth Bader Ginsburg, and they actually went out. So Ruth Bader Ginsburg, when she was young, went out with a future leader of the Kahana movement.
Oh, that would have been
true story. That's absolutely true.
That would have been catastrophic for her judicial advancement.
Well, her only career now is being desiccated by worms. So, okay. All right. Next,
so
yeah.
This next verse, I want everyone to really pay attention to it,
yes,
because it has a grammatical form that I'm often asked about, and it will actually it came into play when we read the first parasha of the Tanakh, of the Torah.
Mm-hmm.
And when I get to it, I'll explain it. Okay?
Yep.
But this is going to be an interesting verse. وَيَسِمْ هَعِبَدْ إِذْ يَدُو تَحَتْ يَرِخْ أَبْرَهَامْ أَدُونَاو وَيَشَبَعْ لَو al-hadabar hazeh. And so the servant set his hand under the thigh of Abraham. Now this is the form. Adonai. This is plural. Okay? And it's literally his master's. Okay? And he swore himself to him according to this matter. Now you will often see the plural used. The plural is used for Adonai here, for Abraham. It's used for Potiphar later. It's used for Pharaoh. It's used for the master. When we read in the Torah later about the slave, the Hebrew slave who doesn't want to go free because his master had given him a wife and children. It says if he loves his master, and they uses the word same form, Adonai. Okay. Mm-hmm. And this is the plural, and this was called the plural. Is the way I look at it, is the plural of formality. It's anytime a person who is in a higher position of authority than another, and it has nothing to do with plurality in number, right? Because there's only one Lord here. And this is Abraham, even though he's spoken of as being in the plural, and so. The same way when we look at the idea of now I say Adam b'tzelmeinu k'dmutenu so forth. Let us. We would like to make a man in our image, after our likeness. This doesn't necessarily imply a plurality of deities making this. This is also a formal plural. Which is also, by the way, the same reason why you have Elohim instead of Eloah.
Exactly, and the same reason that many Christians will argue, oh, see, the Torah itself, shows that there are multiple gods, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Ghost. I don't know how many times I've heard a Christian try to argue that point with me, and I just
there's so much bunk.
I just end the conversation at the point. I did want to say one or two things about this. Okay, so a couple of things. So I agree with you. I think that it is the formal plural. Sometimes they also call this the royal we or the royal plural, right? So the example is like the Queen of England. She'll say, "Excuse me, we shall have our tea now." And you look around the room and there's nobody else there except her, and she's talking about herself because as an important person, she refers to herself in the plural. It's a formal way of addressing other people, just as another formal way of addressing other people. And you see this a lot in the Torah, and you see this a lot in modern languages, including modern Hebrew, sometimes, and in other modern languages would be to address them in the third person. So you would say something like, would you would be speaking to Donald Trump, let's say, and would say, would Donald Trump like to have his tea now? You don't say would you. You is considered informal. And in certain Romance languages, like Spanish, for instance, right? There, as I'm sure many people know, I'm sure there.
Status.
Usted, right? You have two, and you have usted. So two is the second person, and usted is basically the third. It's translated as you, but it actually acts as a third person pronoun. So it takes exactly the same verbs or exactly the same parts of speech as he or she would. And if I'm not mistaken, usted is short for. No, I'd have to ask Volky because he knows this. But I think usted. I have to remember now. I'm going to mess it up, so I don't want to say something that's wrong. But in Portuguese, it's equivalent to você, and você is short for I forget. Hold on a second. Let me get the real thing here. 1 second. Because it's important to understand. Oh. Come here. Yeah, come here.
While he's looking for Volky, I'll just mention that even in German, you have the formal and informal speech in German. So when I speak to my boss or someone who I don't know on a informal level, I would always use the plural form.
Okay, Volk, explain about você in Portuguese. Go ahead. Just very briefly, because I don't want to get sidetracked too much, but it is relevant. I know, but do the quick.
You're saying the TV distinction I'm supposed to
No,
explain?
why você is a third person and what it stands for and all this
Well, it's
stuff.
not third person.
Under 1 minute.
It's the singular formal second person that uses the same conjugations as the third person.
Because it's short for?
Vossa mercê became você. But in certain dialects of Portuguese, they use vossa mercê or vos mercê.
Okay, so vossa mercê stands for your mercy, right?
Your mercy. It originally was vossa now it means the feminine singular for the second person now it means the second person plural informal, but originally the Latin I don't remember what it was. Vostra, was it vostra? It was pronounced.
I don't remember.
It's the feminine singular. The feminine singular for the. I'm not exactly sure the real word.
All right. Instead, is the Spanish equivalent of você?
It basically means it could mean, but the genders in Hebrew are different. For the way that it changes is based on the gender. In Hebrew,
All right. Well, I don't want to get too
The
sidetracked. All
possessives
right.
change
All right.
based on the possessor, not the possessed, whereas the gender of the word changes in Romance language is different.
I'm back. Okay, so at any rate, so it's basically the main point is, without getting into all the gory details, because he will give you the details for the next hour, and is that there are many languages, including modern languages, that have this idea of very formal forms, and the way it's expressed in Hebrew is through using the plural, and the way it's expressed in certain Romance languages, even to this day, is to use the third person rather than the second person conjugation. All right, let's go on.
And so I just wanted to mention that because that's a very interesting form, and that is the first time you come across it in the Tanakh.
Right.
Where are we? So we are now on the third Aliyah. ويقح عبد عشر جمالين ميك جمالي أدوناف. There it is again. ويلخ وكل طوب أدوناف. One more time. بيضو ويقوم ويلخ الأرام نحرايم العير نحور. And so the servant took 10 camels of his master's camels, and he went. And all the goodness of the master was in his hands, or his power, possession. So he rose and he went to Aram Naharaim, which means Aram of the two rivers.
Yeah, which two rivers?
To the land
Euphrates
of
and
Nahor. Yeah,
are we speaking about the Euphrates and the Tigris, where they meet?
Could
Possibly. The Euphrates and the Tigris meet in, I believe, in southern Turkey.
Yeah.
In fact, I know because I was watching one of my favorite. I love to watch travel. I love to travel and watch travel videos. And one of my favorite travel vloggers named Drew Binsky was traveling around Turkey, and he came to a place in Turkey, in southern Turkey, where the tour guide there said something along the lines of, "Oh, you are now in Mesopotamia." And I was like, Mesopotamia? What is this guy talking about? And he went on to explain that this is the place where the Euphrates and the Tigris River meet, somewhere in southern Turkey. So
Mesopotamia means between the rivers.
Sure, but when we think of Mesopotamia, we don't think of exactly where they come together, the confluence.
No.
I don't know. We think of it much, we think of it much further south. But it's possible Aram was up north. The Aramaic, the kingdom of Aram was up north, and I think did stretch into southern Turkey. So it's possible that these Naharaim, these two rivers, could be, where the Euphrates and the Tigris break off into two separate rivers, because they do meet there. All right.
Yeah. Well, wherever it was, it's the place that he actually went to, where Aram Naharaim, where he's within Aram Naharaim,
right,
is the city of Nahor, who was the brother of Avram, and that is the city of Haran. Which is where Nahor lived, and subsequently Bethuel and Lavan and Rivka and all them, which is where Yaakov later goes.
Yep. Later. All right. Okay.
ويفرخ הגמלים מחוץ לעיר. So this is interesting. I'm gonna stop right here because this is my pet peeve. We have these people who insist that ancient Semitic had only one vowel, and so now we have a verb form, which you could, the way it's written without the vowels, you could actually say it's either wayavarech, or you can say wayavrech or yavroch,
right,
because they're all written the same way. But here it means he made the camels kneel, which is
it's the causative. It's what we call the causative, or the he feel form. It's a third person singular future he feel form, which is usually the causative. He caused the camels to kneel.
Yep.
He made the camels kneel.
And so the camel didn't bless anything outside of the city.
Right.
Okay, so ويبرح الجمالين מחוץ לעיר אל באר המים לעת ערב לעת צאת הסועבות. And so he made the camels to kneel outside of the city by a well of water at the time of the evening, at the time that the drawers of water came out. And this is actually a feminine form also. So these are talking about the girls. وَيَمَارْ Adonai Elohe Adoni Abraham Hakarina Lefanai Hayom Wa'aseh Chesed Im Adoni Abraham. And now this is the servant speaking, and he says, Adonai, the God of my master Abraham, which is really interesting. An interesting form. Now we remember that this is the man who
here it says
is in
Adoni, right? It doesn't even say Adonai; it says Adoni.
Yeah, well, it's written the same way. But the point I'm getting at is this: this is a man who's over everything of the house of Avram. It says he was the one in control of everything that Avram had. And we know that Avram had at least 318 people who were retainers that were born in his house. Is what the text says. They were born in his house. Now, a part of those people being born in his house, it says they were all circumcised.
Right.
Because they had to be circumcised. Now, here we have a person who cries out to Adonai, but he doesn't say Adonai Elohi, or he says the God of Avram, my master, which doesn't necessarily mean anything that he would be idolatrous. It just is a strange way of saying it, saying my God.
Well, I guess it implies that Eliezer was a loyal member of the household. That
he was definitely a loyal member of the household.
Yeah, obviously. But I guess what I mean to say is that he took on worship of this God because his master taught him to worship this God, right? We ourselves still say Elohe Abraham Yitzhak and Yaakov to this very day.
Well, that's
right?
what I'm getting at.
Yeah.
Now, these people are called the house of Avram. Right? He's definitely a foreigner. We know he's a foreigner.
Yeah.
He wasn't born from Abraham himself, but he was still attached to the house of Avram.
Sure.
Because it says the person who doesn't circumcise himself on the 8th day was to be separated from his people. Yeah. And that would mean that he would have to have been sent away from the house of Avram because he belonged to the house of Avram. But anyways, this an idea that I've always presented, that you could be a member or attached to the house without being a physical, literal descendant.
Yeah, listen, servants. It's explicit in the Torah that non-Israelite servants must be circumcised.
Okay, I didn't get the joke. Someone just wrote, "Get out of here, son. You're making me look bad." I missed it, whatever it was.
Yeah.
Anyhow.
I'm not even seeing the comments for some reason.
So he says, Adonai, the God of my master Abraham, Hakrena Lefanai Hayom.
But Yaakov, what I wanted to say is that non-Israelite servants must be circumcised.
Absolutely,
they're part of a household. Anyone who's part of an Israelite's household, all the males, they must be circumcised by law.
Yep, and a slave who is purchased, a slave who is purchased by someone, and he belongs to their house. For instance, the Kohen, okay, only the family of the Kohanim are allowed to eat from the sacred offerings. All right. However, it says that the slave of a Kohen can also eat from those sacred things. And that's because he is a member of that house. It doesn't make him literally a Levite, but he becomes a member of that house.
That's right.
And he will remain that way until he leaves that house, just like the daughter of a Kohen. She's allowed to eat from her father's house as long as she remains with her father. But if she marries someone outside of a Cohen's family, for instance, if she marries to another tribe that's not a Cohen and is not allowed to eat from those sacred things, and she has a child, then she becomes a member of the house that she married into, and she's no longer allowed to eat from the sacred things of the Kohanim.
But what's interesting is if she goes to that second husband and she does not have a child, does it say have a child? I can't remember if it says has a child or it says consummates with. I think it does say have a child, right?
Yeah, it says she has, as long as she hasn't had a child.
Right.
But now it does say if she returns back as she was in her virginity, I think.
Right.
In her Betula, then she's allowed to go back to her father's house, and she's still a part of her father's house.
Right, because in a sense, she has not yet consummated by not having a child. She hasn't really become part of that new household, you know. And now she leaves. She goes back to her father's house, and now she's once again able to eat the food that's only reserved for the Kohanim, the holy food. And the point that I wanted to make is that this is, again, there's so many of them, but this is just one more clear piece of evidence of a patrilineal descent in the Torah, or should we say, not directly but indirectly, in the sense that we see that the household is everything is based on the father's status. Whatever the father's status is, then everyone in that household essentially takes on the same status, and that would apply to the females. That would apply to the males, and then the males, when they take on their father's status, and when they go out and start their own households, they're acquiring the status that their fathers had. When the women marry, they basically switch over to the new household of their husband, and now they become part of that household. And all the descendants, and all the servants, and all the members of that household take on the aspects of the father. So if the father is of a certain tribe, they're essentially of that tribe. If the father's a Kohen, then they're essentially part of a Kohanic household. So again, it's clear proof that of patrilineal or patriarchal dominance, which implies also patrilineal descent, because everything's being passed down by the status of the father. So again, this is a clear proof of patrilineal descent, of ultimately what leads to patrilineal descent. Let's put it that way.
And so, just to finish up the verse, it says, "Hakrena lefanai hayom," which basically means let something happen today in my presence. Wa'aseh chesed im adoni, and do chesed, which is faithfulness with my master Abraham.
Yeah.
הנה אנוכי ניצב על עין המים, ובנות אנשי העיר יוצאות לשאוב מים. He says, look, I'm now standing at a well of water, and the daughters of the men of the people, they have come out to draw water. Now, this is something Melech and I have talked about many times, about asking for a sign from God. Even Abraham, he himself said, hey, you keep telling me I'm going to have a child and this and that, and I'm going to be, inherit all these things. What have you given me that I can know that I'm going to actually receive these things? God obliged, gave him a sign. And here you have the servant of Avram, who more than likely observed his master doing the same thing. Now he's asking God. He says, "Hey, this is how I'm gonna know that this is the one." And I'm gonna tell you something. I'm gonna read this part, and then I'm gonna tell you how I met my. Well, actually, I'll tell you how I met my wife first.
Go ahead.
If you don't believe God answers prayer when you put it to Him, I'm here to tell you, I was really depressed. I'm looking for the right woman, can't find the right woman. And so basically I said, look, God, if you want me to have a wife, you're going to have to bring her to me because I'm terrible.
Wait, hold on a second. Wait, hold on 1 second, Yaakov. Hold on. Stop the story for 1 second. Okay, 1 second. Okay. Go ahead.
So I said, look, I'm terrible at it. So I need you to send me the woman that you want me to marry. However, here's how I'm going to know that she is the woman you sent me. I said she has to look like this, she has to be like this, and she has to be so-and-so. She has to be Karaite. She has to love the Torah like I love the Torah. She has to love these languages like I love the languages. And God obliged. And Melech was there when I first met my wife. We were, this was years and years ago. We were online, and we had some colleagues over here in Europe who knew my wife, and they introduced her to the group. Now, I hadn't told anybody. This was only maybe a month after I made the prayer. And so I saw her. She couldn't see me at the time, but I saw her. And she could hear me, but not see me. So she's introducing herself, and she's going down this list, man. The first thing I noticed was she looked exactly like the woman I asked for. Okay, that's the first thing I have to say. She looked exactly like the woman that I prayed for. And then I started hearing about her. Oh, she's a Karaite. She's born from a pretty well-known Karaite family. She's gone to a university. She's got a master's degree in Semitic languages. And when she got to that point, I started laughing. And she thought something was wrong. I was like, no, nothing's wrong. But anyway, so the meeting was over. I'm laying in the bed, okay? And I'm thinking, God, if this is the woman, what in the hell am I supposed to do? She's on the other side of the world from where I'm at. And before I even got finished asking the question, one of the people that knew both of us called me up. This is the first time he's ever called me up on my cell phone. Called me up, said, "Hey, Yaakov, man, I don't know if you're looking for a woman, but if you are, what do you think about Oya?" I was like, "No way, no way." And that's how I met my wife. And I'm telling you, it's been wonderful. So here we have a similar situation.
And she's a great cook.
Oh yeah, man! I'm telling you, look at me. Do I look like I've missed a meal? So we're about to come into the same type of situation, and so here we have the servant. He's outside of the city. He's at the well of water. He notices in the evening time the girls are starting to come out to draw water for the families and the animals, and he says, "Okay, Avram said you're gonna send somebody before me to bring this girl." So he says, وَحَيَا هَنَعَرَى أَشْرْ أُمَّارْ عَلَيْهَا حَتِّنَا خَدَيْخ وَإِشْتَي وَأَمْرَ شِتَي وَغَمْلَيْخَ أَشْكَي وَفَا هُكَّخْتَ لِعَبْدِخَ لِيِتْحَخ وَبَا إِذَا كِي أَسِيتَ خَسَدْ إِمْ أَدُنِي.
Yeah.
So he says, here's how I'm going to know. It shall be that the young girl, Hanara, even though it's not spelled with a final K, which I shall say to her, Hati Kadecha, bring down your jug, because I would like to drink. And she says, drink, and also your camels I will water. I will water them. She, she is the one you have chosen for your servant, for Isaac. And with that, I shall know that you have kept faith with my master.
Mm-hmm.
So that's pretty cool. Now, the same thing happened to him that happened to me. ويهيه ترم كلا لدبر وحين رفقة يوسف أشر يلذا لبثوئيل بن ملخا عيشة نخور أخي أبراهام وخدى على شخمه. And it so happened that before he finished to speak, he beheld Rivka coming out, the one that was born to Bethuel, the son of Milcah, who is the wife of Nahor, the father of, or brother of Abraham, and her jug was upon her shoulder. وهنأرى طوبات مرئي מאוד בכלל, وإيش לא ידעה, وتيرد העינה, وتملي كدا وتعال. And the young girl was very beautiful, which basically literally says she had a very good form.
Yeah.
A virgin, and no man had known her, which means she had any sexual contact. And she came down to the well, and she filled her jug and pulled it back out. So evidently, when it says "Wata'al," or she came out,
Mm-hmm.
or she brought it. So evidently, whatever it was, she had the jug, put it in the water, and came back up to wherever this the camels were.
Yeah.
ويروت העבד לקראתה ויאמר הגמיעיני מעט מים מקדיך. Now this is a really strange word to use. Basically, it means there's and the servant ran to meet her, and he says "Hagmi'ini," which basically means "give me something to drink," okay, or "give me drink." A little bit of water from your jug. What Tolmer?
You're talking about which word? Hatina? Hatina?
Where is hagmi'i is the verb, and it's from gema.
I'm sorry. Which
Gema
which,
is the same
I
thing as
lost the
kata.
verse. What verse are we in now?
That was in verse 17.
Oh, in 17. Okay. Yeah.
What Tomer Shite Adoni. وتماحير وتورد كذا على يدا وتشكيه. And she said, drink, my lord. And she hurried and came and brought down her jug al yada upon her hand, and gave, basically she had it here and she brought it down here, and she gave it something to drink.
And by the way, this word hagmieni,
yeah,
hagmiini, which is not a very common word, and certainly not used at all. If you said that to a modern Israeli, they wouldn't know what the heck you're talking about. But it only appears twice in the entire Tanakh, so it's almost a hapax, almost. Not quite, but almost. The other place it appears is in Job, and chapter 39, verse 24. And it's used figuratively there. So it's
it's I believe Aramaic. And interesting that you have these two words, one here in the land of Aram, and then one from a person who was also Aramean who lived in the land of Uz. Uz was also one of the sons of Aram. That's pretty interesting. But you have the two words from the same place. And oftentimes you see in the Tanakh where when people are speaking, they use certain words, certain foreign words, as a form of putting you in a surrounding. So when you see sometimes foreign words like Aramaic words being used in Aramaic settings, it helps put you in what I want to say, the environment of those places.
Yeah.
And
interesting. I never thought about that, but I'm going to keep an eye out for that. Yeah.
And so you see that here.
Okay.
Okay, I lost a spot. Oh.
Verse 18.
Yep, 18. وتمر شتاء أدمي وتمهر أنا already that too. Verse 19. والتخال اللي حشفوه وتمر جم لملاخة إيش أب إمك اللو لشتوف. And so she finished giving him drink, and she says, also for your camels I will draw, talking about drawing the water, until they are finished drinking. وتمهر والتآر كدا إلى هشوخث وترود عود إلى حب إير لشؤوف وتشعف لخل جملار. And so she hurried, and she returned her jug for Ta'or. والتعار كدا إلى هشوخث. And she returned her jug to the shochet, which is where you would get the water, I'm thinking. And she ran again to the water.
That's interesting.
Robert Abrams also for the camels. I'm missing something here.
What are you missing?
Verse 20.
Yeah, also not a very...
Oh, okay, that's a trough. Okay. And she hurried and emptied her jug into the trough, the shochet. I'm thinking the trough is called the shochet, and it's from the same word, shaka, which means to water, lishkof, which would be right because that's where the animals would get their water.
So, by the way, this word ta'ar,
the
PTB claims
it's
related.
ara.
It's related to the word erva, which means nakedness. So ta'ar means to bear naked, to empty in this case.
Yeah.
That's what they say. Timaher v'ta'ar kada el hashoket. So shoket is again translated, as you mentioned, as trough, but shoket again comes from the word. It's related to the same word we saw before, lashkot. We see it a number of times, right? So we see it in, for instance, in verse 19, and that means to water. Even in modern Hebrew, lashkot, if you want to water your garden, I water my garden. So the shoket is the comes from that
it
same.
It would be like the water dispenser, because
there you go, the water dispenser, the watering.
Shkof means like to drink, but it literally means to give water. To give water to something.
Yeah,
And so the
lashkot
shochet
is,
would be the dispenser of water. It's where the animals would come to get the water.
yep, that's a good
So
way to
it's
describe it.
whatever it is.
Yep. And I wanted to point out something that, I like this Robert Abrams commentary. So he points out, he makes a very interesting point, which is that, okay, so now the servant, ostensibly Eliezer, but we're not sure, has met this woman, right? And so the woman lowers her cod. How do you say cod again in English? Her jug, and gives to Eliezer, or I won't say Eliezer because I'm not sure it's Eliezer, to the servant to drink, right? And she finished giving him water. So you have this part, right? So she gives him water to drink, and so there's the first part of the vow, right, or the not the vow, but the request that Eliezer made, that the servant made to God, that she should not only give me water, and then she should also water the camels. So here's part A is fulfilled, but we don't know whether part B is going to be fulfilled. There's like a certain pause, right? While he's drinking the water, he has no idea whether afterwards she's going to offer to water the camels or not. So he must
This is after
great
she
suspense,
finished
right?
giving him drink. She said, "For your animals too." That's right.
Right. And then afterwards, after he drinks, which probably took a couple of minutes, right, or at least a minute or so, then she comes back and says, "Oh, let me give your camels the water as well," right? So there's this like little timing play that we miss. We don't think about the narrative of the story, which is, Elias is probably wondering while he's drinking the water, is she gonna, is this the one? Is she really gonna offer the camels to drink as well, or is she gonna stop after this? And then she goes ahead and does it. So,
But you have to ask yourself too. You think now we've had two different instances in the Torah so far in the last two weeks, last two Parashath that we've read. One was Abraham, who was hospitable to the people that he saw. Some people came to visit or came to call, as you sometimes say, and he ran out to meet them, gave them water and something to eat. And then we have the next one was Lot. Okay, and now we have another instance where the servant of Abraham going back to this place. And you have to ask yourself, was it a common trait amongst those people in those days to just be hospitable? Because if it was, then that would happen for any woman. Think about it. Any woman that he would talk to would, if it was common, any one of them should have done the same thing.
Well,
so
no,
the
I don't think
idea
so.
that he
I
would
don't-
ask for a sign, being that she would be so well inclined to not only give a total stranger some water, but also offer herself to serve his animals as well. That
Right.
must have been something that was not the norm.
Right.
Because otherwise, why would they make the point that Abraham was so hospitable to his guests, or Lot was so hospitable to his guests? And then here, this is actually the sign that he's looking for the family of Abraham, because he doesn't know who they are.
Sure.
Or we assume he doesn't know who they are.
Yep.
Right?
Yeah, I agree 100%. The point being that we would have expected in this culture for a certain amount of hospitality, that the watering girls would have offered the stranger to drink water, so that's not the test. The test is which woman will go above and beyond. Which woman is so kind and so considerate that she's not just going to offer me to drink, she's also going to offer the animals to drink. Because remember, camels, after a trip in the desert, they're going to drink a heck of a lot of water.
They're going to drink a pile of water.
Yeah, I mean, she's got to be drawing a lot of water. This is not an easy task, and her culture would have allowed her just to give the water to the stranger, and then he could draw his own water for the camels. But and it does mention camels. It mentions plural camels. I mean, so we're talking about
well, there were 10.
It does say explicitly. Oh, right.
It says 10 camels. He took 10 camels.
And that
now
probably
you have
doesn't
to
even
ask,
include the one that was the gift. That doesn't even include the one that he was probably riding on. And maybe, who knows, he could have taken other people with him.
Yeah, he took 10 camels. Now, we'll see this later. I don't know if we'll get to it today. But whenever Rivka whenever she's sent back with it says her maidens. Okay. Now we see that they brought with these camels gold and gifts and so forth that was given to Bethuel and his family. I think also to Laban. I'm not sure if he got anything then or not. But anyways, the point is they were loaded with all the good of his master. Those were evidently going to be the mahar, which we talk about, which is the bridal price that we see in the Torah. And then she comes back with, it says her maidens. We don't know exactly how many maidens she had, but since it's plural, we can assume at least minimum 2.
Sure.
Okay. So if you have 10 camels, you have one servant that we see. Evidently, there was more than one servant. You don't come back unless he left some of the camels there. You don't come back with just him, the woman, and her 2 maidens alone. You know, so you have to think how many men and servants went with the servant, because you know that's going to be a dangerous trip from Beersheba all the way to Haran and back.
Right.
You know,
Yeah, that's right. I was actually
for one man alone with a beautiful woman, camels full of gold.
Yeah,
nah, that just doesn't happen.
Going through the you know, desert or whatever. I don't know if it was desert.
You can't do that today.
Hell no. try going through the Bronx, you know, like that, and you won't make it very far. All right.
But anyway.
So, okay, so we're in verse 21. Yeah.
وهائيش مشتاق لا محاريش لداعة ححت ليا أدونai دركو imlo. And so the man was mishta'eh, which means that he was paying attention. He was kind of observing her, so that he could know if Adonai had caused his way to prosper or not. Which means, has he become successful on his derek, on his path, his mission, or not?
Right.
Verse 22. ويهي كأشر كل حق جماليم لشتوف ويقاخ إيش نازم زحاف بقع مشكلو وشني سميدين على يديها 10 زحاف مشكلان. That's an interesting thing. It says in the and so it happened as the camels finished drinking, the man took golden rings, which was the weight of a becha, which is a unit of measure of weight, and 2 bracelets upon her hand, which were 10 weights of gold. So, verse 23, وَيَوْمَرْ بَثْ مِئَت. That's how you ask a question.
By the way, it should be pointed out that the Becca is half a shekel.
Half a shekel, yeah.
Yeah, and Becca comes from the underlying root Baka, which basically means to cleave into 2. So it's like a shekel that's been, you know, half a shekel, right? That's what they said. A cleaved shekel, or a shekel cleaved into 2.
Yep. ويومر بث مئة حجيب نعالي Hayesh Beit Avicha Makom Lanu Lalin. And so he says, whose daughter are you? Please tell me, does your father's house have a place for us to stay the night?
Mm-hmm.
Lalin. In fact, that's where you get the word malon, which means a hotel or a place to stay the night, a lodging place.
Mm-hmm.
But Tomer Elah Bat Bethuel Anochi Ben Milka Asher Yalada the Nahor. And she said to him, the daughter of Bethuel I am, or I am the daughter of Bethuel, the son of Milcah, whom she gave birth to for Nahor.
Mm-hmm.
In this I want to mention this. Now, this is a rabbinic fable. I don't know if it's absolutely true, and no one really knows. But this is the rabbinic commentary on Yishka and Milcah. Who were the daughters of Nahor. Now it says that Yishka is supposedly Sarah,
Mm-hmm.
and the Milcah is of course here. So this would mean that that was the daughter of Nahor, and but we know that that can't be correct because it says Abraham said that Sarah was my sister, the daughter of my father, but not the daughter of my mother.
Mm-hmm.
So that can't be right. Just something that popped in my mind.
Mm-hmm. Wait, so let's get this lineage correctly. I'm the daughter of. Okay, so Tomer Elav, Bat Bituel Anochi. So Sarah's father is Bituel. Bituel is the son of Milcah, who was born in Nahor. So we're talking here about and Nahor is Abraham's grandfather, right?
No. Nahor is Abraham's brother.
No, there are two Nahors, aren't they? Are they not? Are there not?
Mm.
Are you sure about that?
Yeah, it could be. Let's go back and look.
1 second. One second. I can't now walk. I can't. 1 second. Mm-hmm. Genesis 11. Let's just see here. Yeah, when Serug had lived 30 years, he became the father of Nahor. And after he became the father of Nahor, Serug lived 200 years and had other sons and daughters. When Nahor lived 29 years, he became the father of Terach. And after he became the father of Terach, Nahor lived 119 years and had other sons and daughters. And Terach had lived 70 years. He became the father of Abraham, Nahor, and Haran. So there are two Nahors. The first one is mentioned in, where is it? Give the father of Nahor, Genesis 11, chapter 22. And then the second one, so Abraham's grandfather was named Nahor. He's mentioned in 11:22. And then we've got Nahor, the brother of Abraham, mentioned in Genesis 11, chapter 26. So,
yeah, but we know that this Nahor is specifically said to be the brother of Abraham.
1 second.
And I'll
And
show
where
you
does it
that.
say that?
That is in the last Aliyah. It says the last Aliyah of Parashath Hayyei.
Mm-hmm.
This is verse 20. Says وَيَهِي آخَرِ حَدِّبْرٍ هَئِلَي وَيُقَدْ لَأَبْرَهَامْ لَمُور هِنَّي يَلَدَا مِلْكَ جَمْهِ بَنِينَ لَنَخُورْ أَخِيكَ
Right.
إذ أوتس بكرو وإذ بوز أخيه وإذ كموئيل أبي أرام وإذ كاسد وإذ حزو وإذ بلغاش وإذ يدلاف وإذ
Right.
بتوئيل.
Yep.
So
Oh,
Milcah
so
was
where is this?
This is 22 20, starting at verse 20.
All right. 1 second here.
So Milcah here is the wife
Right.
of Nahor, who was the brother of Abraham. Bethuel, her son, would be the nephew
Right.
of Abraham. Laban and Rivka are his children.
Right. Yep. Okay. Let's read this here for 1 second. אמור הנה ילדה מלכה גם היא בנים לנחור אחיך את עוץ בכורו ואת בוז אחי ואת כמואל אבי רם ואת קשת ואת חזו ואת פלגש ואת ילדף ואת בתואל. Okay. בתואל ילד את רבקה. Yeah, okay, so here we have explicit lineage. Yeah, for sure. שמונה ילדה מלכה לנחור אחי אברהם ופלגשו שמה ראומה ותלד גם היא את טבח. Okay. It's clear that's yes. No, for sure. There's no doubt about that. Yeah. Okay, so wait a second here. Let's go back. Okay, Genesis 24. Genesis 24. All right. I just want to look at myself for 1 second. What verse are we on again?
But yeah, hang on. I want to talk about Milcah and Ishka. That's what we were talking about. Let me get back to that part real quick.
All right.
Because I think Milcah and Ishka.
Right.
So this is the daughter of Haran. Haran, who is the brother of both Abraham and Nahor, had the two girls, Yiscah and Milcah. Okay? And we see that in chapter 11, and starting at verse 29. It says, وَيِكَخْ Abraham وَنَهور لَهِمْ نَشِيم Shem Eshet Abraham Sarai وشم Eshet Nahor Milcah.
Right.
Bat Haran Abi Milcah wa Abi Yiscah. So Haran is the father of both Milcah and Yiscah. So I think let me look at Rashi, because Rashi, I think, is the one who makes the comment that Yiscah is Sarah. And there's no way that could be possible. And that's just another point of Talmudic fables,
Right.
that it violates the text of the Torah itself, because we see here that Milcah and Yiscah is the daughters of the brother Haran, who died. Okay, so Nahor and Abraham married or took as wives the daughters of their brother, which means they married nieces. So that's pretty interesting. I actually didn't say Abraham, whoever Yiscah was. Yeah, it doesn't say that Yiscah was Sarah, because Abraham said that Sarah was the daughter of his father.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway,
Yeah.
so the parentage of Milcah and Nahor are both from Terah. However you look at it.
Right.
So this is a pretty tight knit family, to say the least.
Yeah, that's a nice way of putting it.
So وتمر إلى جم تيفن جم مسبو راب عمانو جمكم للون. And she said to him, also fodder and much provender, which is stuff that you would provide for animals to eat, as well as a place to stay the night. وَيْكُوذ هَئِيش وَيِشْتَهُ لَأَمَنَاي. So now the man, he fell down, or he bowed down, and he prostrated himself to Adonai. Yomer, and he says, Baruch Adonai Elohei Adoni Abraham, Asher lo azav hasdo wa amito me'im Adoni Anochi baderech nachani Adonai Beit Ache Adoni. Now this is interesting. So he's asking for a sign. His prayer. Now the sign was not only that he would get a daughter for his master Abraham, but Abraham said, "Go to my family, my relatives, to my land." Okay, not just to any group of people. So he was tasked to go to relatives of Abraham. So he didn't know who they were, evidently. He asked for a sign. The sign wasn't what this girl would do. And the girl did it, and then it comes out that not only was he in the right place, but he was actually found the girl from the right family, not a distant relative, but a direct relative, a near relative of his master Isaac. So that's pretty cool.
Mm-hmm.
So he says, "Blessed is Adonai, the God of my master Abraham, who did not forsake his goodness and his faith with my master. And he baderech, while I was in the way or on my journey, Adonai guided to the house of the brother of my master."
Mm-hmm.
وترد النعرة وتجيز لزيت الماء And so the young girl ran and informed the house of her mother of these things.
Yaakov, we're going to take a break for 5 minutes, all right?
Actually, I'm gonna have to go.
Oh, really?
I hate to kind of cut it off in the middle, but I could leave it open, and I'll come back later, or you
Well, how
send
long are
me
you
a
going to be
text.
gone for?
I'm gonna have to do kiddush, and then we'll eat, and then I'll come back.
So that's going to take
So
like an
maybe
hour,
20
probably,
minutes.
right?
Maybe
Oh,
20
it's
minutes.
20 minutes?
Maybe.
Let's see. So why don't we end it and reconvene in about a half an hour?
Okay.
You want to do that?
Yeah, I think we can do that.
Can you put it on pause, or do we have to make it a second video?
I think we can go back into the same video. I'm not sure.
Right.
But we'll try. Either way, it doesn't matter. I can make another one.
Do you want to just yeah, we can make another one. We can call it part A or part B. Or you could just leave it on and then edit it out later or something like that. You want to just leave it on in the background?
Yeah. I mean, you'll be here, won't you?
Well, I'm going to take a break for maybe. If you're going to take a break for half an hour, I'll take a break probably for close to that as well. That's what I'm saying. Because I'll then use this as an opportunity also to grab a little bite to eat.
All right.
So,
Well, I'll just end it, so it's just not a long pause,
right.
and I'll reconvene it. So.
All right. So figure. Let's see. In
So-
about half an hour.
Yep. So let me just
6 o'clock
say,
your time?
everyone, just in case it doesn't work and you don't come back, I appreciate everyone joining us today. We've been at it for 2.5 hours now. It's a really great parasha. I'll have to go for about 20 minutes.
Yeah.
But I'll come back, and everyone should get a notification
Right.
when it's live again.
And tell all your friends about our study. And if you don't have any friends, go tell your enemies.
That's right.
And if you don't have any enemies, go make some. And then tell them.
Yeah. All right. So
in about a half an hour. So 6 o'clock your time.
okay.
All right. Sounds good. Perfect. All right. Then. See you in a bit.